Hello and welcome to part 4 of this How to Build a Dalek in Blender tutorial series. Thank you for following along so far. Hope it's making sense. Thank you for all the likes and the comments and the questions. If there's anything else you need, then please do tell me, because I'm learning as I'm going as well. And if I start going too fast or too slowly, then just shout at me, because yeah, let's all learn together. So this is where we should have left stuff. We've got the fender, we've got the skirt, we've got the hemispheres, we've got the shoulder bands, we've got the shoulders, we have got the gun box, and we've got the mesh here, which at the moment is just a solid object because of how we modeled it. If you want to know how you can model it as geometry rather than the texture, just send me a comment and I can show you that as well. But today we are going to be working on the shoulder slats, so the little rectangles that go all the way along this mesh section. I'm enjoying playing with the grease pencil. And then if we get a chance, we'll do the little boxes with little rivets that exist here and here. But we'll go on to that later. So let's hit A to select everything, H to hide, 1 into front view because we're modeling front view, and from our plans what we're going to do is Windows key, Shift and S, drag around there, and let's just save that into the reference section as long slat. And we won't need that for now. So let's go back into Blender. We're going to scroll in a bit, Shift A, add a mesh, add a cube. That's obviously too big. So let's control the dimensions over here. So it needs to be 216 millimeters tall, so that is our Z dimension, 216. Wide, it needs to be 51 across. And it says ideal thickness, which is the y-axis, 3 mils, so that is very much not 3 mils. Sorry, there's some sort of emergency vehicle going past in the moment, so I apologize if you can hear that, but yeah, 3 mils over that. And then Control A and apply the scale and press 1 to go back into front view. Now what we want to do is just bring the reference in. Well, that's really loud. That's literally right outside my house. I'm sorry if you can hear that. Right, tab into edit mode, 1 for vertex mode, double tap A to deselect everything, highlight these verts here, Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A, add an image, add a background. It's in my references and it is long slat. And we'll do what we did previously. We're just going to line that top corner up with the top corner of the mesh itself. Whoops. Grab that. And then change our pivot point to 3D cursor. Make sure the reference is selected and just scale that in until it fits. Perfect. And the reason that I'm doing this is because the plans don't actually give us the dimensions of these little screws. So it's just easier if we have this reference available to us so we can model it. Believe it or not, that's basically it for the slat. So let's just Shift S, cursor to world origin. What we can do is cut in a bit of guide geometry so we know where to place these little rivets. So they're right in the center. So let's call this cube master slat long, because we can build all the other slats off this one. And then tab into edit mode, double tap A, deselect everything, Control R to add a loop cut, and we just want that right in the center, like that. And then these little guys here are 72 mils up from the bottom and 72 mils down from the top. So let's add again a loop cut right in the center here, Control R, and then GG, grab them and drag them all the way to the top, and then press G, Z minus 72, and then loop cut again, Control R, drag them all the way down, and then GZ72. Ooh, I typed in 75. GZ72. So now we have a point here let's go into solid. We have a point here and a point here, and that is where the screws need to go. So the easiest way of doing this is just Control S. Let's tab back into object mode, go into wireframe, and let's add a Shift A, mesh, UV sphere. That's obviously way too big. These objects do not need to be detailed at all. So let's leave the segments at 32 and the rings at 16. And what we can do is just tab into edit mode. So everything's all gone orange, and just scale it in using S to scale. Scale and drag until we are round about the size of one of those screw heads. So that should be fine. That makes sense. So according to the dimensions, we've just scaled it to roughly about 5mm. So you might as well just make it 5mm. So click and drag over all of these. Just type in 5 and then Control A and apply the scale. Now, what we really want is for it to be facing towards us. So easiest way of doing that, well, in object mode, press R for rotate, X, and then 90. And that's kind of it. So let's go into side view, and let's position this from front to back. So what I want, if I tap into edit mode, I want this central line of verts here lining up with the front of the slat. So to do that, for a start, let's go back into the sphere, and let's double tap A to deselect everything, and let's just drag over this back half, and then press X, delete verts. Let's turn on snapping up here, so a little magnet, and make sure it's set to snap to edge. Grab Y, just bring it forward. Oh, it does that. Okay, disregard that. Let's just do it manually. Grab Y, and let's just drag it so it's slightly inside the slat. So if you do from the front, you see it's not quite out. It's just kind of sticking in. Let's do right click, shade smooth. Lovely. Now obviously that's the right size, but it's in the wrong place. So one again for front view. Go into wireframe. Actually, we don't even need wireframe. Just go into solid, tab the slat, tab into edit mode, one for vertex mode, and select this point here. Shift and S, cursor to selected. Let's grab this sphere here, which I'm going to call Screw Master. There we go. Shift and D to duplicate it. Right click to confirm. Let's just name that Screw 001. And then Shift and S, selection to cursor. And if we look, that's positioned perfectly. It's actually positioned right on the edge of the slat, which is fine. So actually all that stuff I did about lining it up is completely pointless. Ignore that. Okay, and then go back into one. Click on the slat again. Tab into edit mode. Let's select this point here. Shift and S, cursor to selected. Tab out, select Screw 001. Shift D to duplicate it. Right click. Name that Screw 002. And then Shift S, selection to cursor. And then we can hide our Screw Master. Perfect. So now we've got a slat and we have two screws. So we can now actually get rid of all the geometry we did on the slat just to line everything up because we don't need it. So tab back into edit mode, double tap A to select everything, press 2 to go into edge select, Alt Shift and S, select this central loop cut, this loop cut here and this loop cut here, right click and just click dissolve edges because we don't need it for anything at all. Then tab back out. Now let's apply a bevel to this. So again, tab back into edit mode, double tap A to make sure that everything is deselected, and let's Alt Shift S, no, sorry. Alt Shift click. Oh, have I got verts in the way? Hold on, let me just check. No, I don't. I was just being awkward. Okay, so back into Edge Select. Let's put Shift and click this one, this one. In fact, just hold A to select everything. There you go. And then Control B for bevel, and just drag it out slightly. This doesn't need to be a big bevel. Add 3 segments. That's fine, and let's just make it 0.25. Yeah, lovely. Okay, and then let's let's right click, shade auto smooth. And what I'm actually going to do is let's select both of our screws. Control J to join them as one object. So let's just call them long slat screws. And then what I'm also going to do is, with the screw still selected, I'm going to select our master slat long and just press Control J. And now they're all one object. It's terrible, terrible topology because there is nothing connecting these spheres to this. But again, as I said in the previous one, because it's a flat surface, it will not affect anything at all. There is no shading issues there whatsoever. So that is our long slat. Let's make the short one. The procedure is exactly the same. So let's go into 1. We can delete this empty. So just get rid of that. And hide our master slat long. We've still got our, what is that? Oh, that's my grease pencil. Let's get rid of you. There we are. So Shift A mesh cube, and dimensions, we want them to be, so 51 again from right to left, so X 51, and then top to bottom should be 127. Yeah, too many tabs. 127, and then Y is 3. Shift A, apply the scale. Let's go back in. Deselect everything. Control R, loop cut right down the center, and then 72 down and 20 up. So Control R again, add a loop cut. GG, bring him up, and then grab Z minus 72, and then this bottom one here, loop cut, drag him down, and then GZ20. So we got 1 point here and 1 point here. So let's go back into our scene breakdown over here and unhide Screw Master. I wish I hadn't called it Screw Master. That's going to make me smile every single time I say it. And let's just do exactly the same we did for that. So select the master slat, or in fact let's call that short slat master, and then tab into it with that vert selected, Shift S, cursor to selected, and let's grab the screw, Shift D to duplicate it, and then right click and just call it screw. Forget all the numbers, we don't need them. Shift S, selection to cursor, and then Shift D to duplicate that. Then select this foot here, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's grab that duplicated screw, Shift S, selection to cursor. Lovely, we can hide our Screw Master again. Go back into our short slat master. 2 for edge select, select this edge, and this edge, right click, dissolve edges, and then, don't know why I did that, let's just press A, select everything, Control B for bevel, and we said 0.25 with 3 segments, and then exactly like this time, let's select this, and then shift click this last one, and then Control J. So perfect, we've now got our long slat and our short slat directly on top of each other, which is not what we want, but we'll sort that out in a minute. So how do we start to position them on the shoulders? So let's bring back our shoulders and the shoulder mesh. You see, everything is kind of in the wrong place. So let's start with the long slat. So click on him, and then G and Y, just drag him backwards. So yeah, he's just outside now. Now he's facing the wrong direction. So before we do anything, let's change our pivot point back to bounding box center. Press 7, and then with it selected, press R, 180. So he's now facing the right way. So yeah, lovely. We're going to build it from the back and work around to the front. So the easiest way to do this is with references, because as I say, you can try using procedural ways of doing it, but by the time you faff around with changing the rotation and everything, it's just easier to do it this way. So we need to set up our geometry. So let's start by going back to the plans, Windows Shift S, dragging around there, and let's call that Control S, slats side, and then we need from the top as well. So Windows Shift S, drag around, Control S, slats top, and let's bring those references into Blender. So exactly like we did last time, select our skirt, tab into edit mode, let's 1 for vertex mode, this guy at the front, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab out of edit mode. Now we can change that back to the pivot point back to 3D cursor actually. Let's go into wireframe, Shift A, add image, background, and slat side. So let's drag the top corner of the shoulder section in line with the top corner of the shoulder section. Just make sure that lines up pretty accurately. And S to scale towards the 3D cursor, bring him in. And we want this top section to be the same size as the top section of the drawing. So there we are. Perfect. And then 7 for top view. Again, with this front point here selected, Shift A, image, background, slats top. We need to rotate it, so R minus 90. And again, let's just line everything up here. So get it relatively central. And again, line this top circle up with the top of the shoulders. And then scale towards the 3D cursor. So those two circles are the same size as each other. As you can see, there's a bit of a disconnect between the plans and the model, but it's fine. We're literally just going to use these as a reference so we can see what goes where. Control S to save. Now, according to the plans, the top of the slat is 18 mils down from the top of the shoulder section. Very, very easy way of doing that. So 3 for edit mode. Let's click on our master slat long. Tab into edit mode. Click and drag around these top verts. Shift S. Selection to cursor. Tab out object. Set origin to 3D cursor. And then that's right. Now we're going to go back into bounding box center. Snapping on, and we're going to change it to vertex. And then let's just grab Z and hover over this last point here. Great. So now it's exactly the same height as the shoulder section. If you missed how I did that, I'll undo it. So with snapping selected to vertex, the way that Blender works, if you click and drag, it'll look for the nearest vertex to where you are. So G, Z, drag up, and then just move your mouse over to this top vertex here. See, whichever one I click on, it lines it up with, but we want this top one here. Great, and then we can turn off snapping. Okay, so now we need to do some positioning. Let's have a look. Oh, we also need to grab Z minus, what did I say? 18. Minus 18. There we are. So let's G, Y, and drag him back so he's just touching the mesh, like that. A little bit more, GY, just touching. And then what I want to do actually is probably from here. So yeah, go G and Y and drag it so there. Scrolling just a little bit further. G, yeah, that's perfect. And now what I want to do is add a loop cut to allow me to position things from the right place. So let's have a look at this. Let's tab into our mesh just to see exactly how high it is. So if we just randomly select this vertex here, you can see that is at 297 millimeters. So let's click back our long slat, tab into edit mode, deselect everything, add a loop cut, drag him up, keep dragging until it's about 297 millimeters. That'll do. Let's just type in 297. And then Shift S, cursor to selected. In fact, even better than that, let's just scroll around, select this back edge, Shift S, cursor to selected, and then if we object, set origin to 3D cursor. Now everything we do, it'll basically use that point to transform from. So if we rotate, you see it rotates from that, which is exactly what we need to line everything up. Now we don't actually need that geometry anymore, so let's just Alt Shift S that and dissolve edge, and let's just move him as close as we can to the mesh. So G, Y, lovely, and then we want to rotate him so it's completely flush to that back edge. So press R and then rotate it down. Now that was the easy one. It gets significantly more difficult from this point on. But the plus side, we only have to do it half of the section. So what we need to do is rotate that slat around this circle object here. So that's a lot easier said than done. Because of the shape of the skirt, it becomes pretty tricky because there are some big bends. So I have found, and if there's an easy way of doing this, please do tell me because I hate doing this. The best way of doing it, if we go into the shoulder section, tab into edit mode, Alt, Shift and S, this top edge here, Shift S, selection to cursor, and then change our pivot point back to 3D cursor. Select our master slat long, go into wireframe, Shift and D to duplicate it, right click to confirm, and now everything we do should rotate around this circle. So it's a good way to get started. It is by no means the end of it. So if I press R, you see it rotates around. So what we want to do is just line everything up as best we can. So we're just going to keep Shift D and then R, Shift D, R, Shift D, R, Shift D, R. So just try and match up the positioning as best you can. Shift D, R, Shift D, R, and the last long one, Shift D, R. Now, from the top, that looks great, but if you go into solid mode, you see everything is intersecting, the angles are all wrong, it's all gone a bit weird. Now, best way of fine-tuning it is by doing each individual slat. So I'll show you this one. I'll show you a couple, actually. So let's select this one here, change its pivot point back to bounding box center, and then you see here it says global. So basically, Blender has different ways of doing things. It can either do things based on the whole world, or it can do things based on the individual object. And at the moment we've been doing purely global. We're going to need to start doing local. So change that to local. And now we need to do this all by eye. So this one, for example, I'll do R, X, I think that's the one I need. Let's rotate that out until, again, it's basically sat on that mesh. And then let's just rotate Y, or is it Z? No, Y, and just swing him in a little bit. So again, that's one of the easy ones. This one, again, this will entirely depend on your model, so don't copy what I'm doing for this. This is just how I am doing these particular ones. So R, X, swing him out as best you can. Get out. And again, you want it as flush as possible. And then I think if we, yeah, you see that the angle of that is really bad. So we need to go R, Z, spin him round a little bit. Again, hold shift to make smaller movements, and we can do it with this one as well. R, Z, just spin him. There we go. So we need to keep doing that across the whole model. So I'll stop the recording here, just because it's really boring to watch and it'll make the video far too long. But again, it's just fine tuning. So just rotating, spinning things around on, just experiment between the X, Y, and Z axes until you get something you like. And I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm nearly done, but this is quite a good example. You see, because of how we rotated it, this one isn't actually on the mesh. So if we just zoom in, G, and then X, nope, Z, nope, Y, Y. And let's just drag him back towards, and then get it as close as you can. Lovely. And then this last one here, just zoom in, and then G, Y. And because it's rotated, it's moving along its local axis, it's basically Y is considering forward and back of this specific object. If we change that to global, if we press G and Y, it would be going this way, which isn't helpful. So undo that, and then just make sure it's set on local, and G, Y, and bring him in. And then let's just have a little rummage around, just make sure that everything is looking relatively good. The advantage of the Daleks is because they're all handmade, none of these things are particularly even. So as long as they're sort of vaguely Dalek shaped, then that should be fine. So Control S to save that, because that's a lot of work. Now what I want to do, let's grab, so select this one, shift and select this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Control J, make them all one object. Control A to apply all transforms. And then again, with this object selected, let's go into our modifiers tab, add modifier, generate mirror, make sure it's mirrored on the X direction. Lovely. And let's just apply that. Yay! Perfect. So that's our long slats done. We need to do exactly the same with the short slats. So again, let's select our short slat here. 3, grab Y, just bring him forward. And then it's just a case of doing exactly what we did for the last one. So let's just change this back to global. Go into viewport, shading wireframe. Scroll in. Don't do that in 3. Tab into edit mode. Deselect everything. 1 for vertex mode. Select these top ones. Shift S. Cursor to selected. Tab out. Object. Set origin. Origin to 3D cursor. Snapping to the nearest vertex. Grab Z. Drag up. And then just hover your mouse over this point up here. So it's in line with the top of the shoulder section like we did last time. And then turn off snapping, grab Z, minus 18, because if you remember, it's 18, the top of the slat is 18 millimeters down from the top of the shoulders. And again, let's just drag him, G, Y, drag him into place. Let's go into solid mode, scroll on in, so G, Y, drag him into place. So he's basically there. Go back into the mesh, tab, wireframe. If I'm going too quick as well, please do tell me, because I get a bit complacent with this bit because it's quite boring. I mean, nothing about building a Dalek is boring, but this is it's pretty boring. Select this top vert here. So again, that's 297. I should have known because it's the same bloody height. Go back into our short slat master. Edit mode, Control R. Drag him up to 297. Solid mode. 2 for edge select. Grab this edge. Shift S. Cursor to selected. Tab out. Object. Set origin. Origin to 3D cursor. Tab back in. To edit mode. Double tap A to deselect everything. Alt Shift and select this edge here. Right click. Dissolve edges. And let's just position him properly. Now there actually isn't a singular front slat. So you can see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we really only need to do this 3 times. And then we can mirror it just like we did before. But let's still line him up as best we can from this angle. So 3. And just rotate and swing him out so he's touching the front of that. Check that's okay. Yes, it is. Cool. And then let's go back. Click on our shoulder objects. Tab into edit mode. This top edge is still selected, but if not, just make sure 2 for edge mode, or just select edge up here. And Alt Shift S, select this top edge. Shift S, cursor to selected. Lovely. Tab out. Change our pivot point to 3D cursor. Select our short slat. And then 7 for top view, so we can see, if we go into wireframe, we can see the positioning. And again, let's just R to rotate him round, line him up with this fella over here. Shift D, and then R, rotate. And then Shift D, R, rotate. Go back into solid. And that's actually not too bad at all. But again, let's go back to pivot point, bounding box center. Go to local and then just line them up a little bit better because some of these are sitting a bit too proud. So select this one, RX, and swing him in. Lovely. This one here, RX, swing him in. Okay. Maybe did a bit too much RX and just push him out a little bit. Same with this one actually. So RX, swing him out. Yep, great. And then just with this one selected, shift and select this one, shift and select this one, Control J, so then they're all one object. Control A, apply all transformations, add a mirror modifier, and apply. And that hopefully wasn't as tedious as it could have been. So now we should have all of our slats perfectly aligned. Let's change this back to global. And now just for fun, Alt H, unhide everything. And it's looking quite Dalek shaped, isn't it? So if we put a, if we do a little render, like it's not going to be a full quality render, let's just go into viewport shading. You can see with the mesh there, the slats are all lined up really, really well. And that's looking like a Dalek to me. So let's rename some objects. In fact, let's join all the slats together. So short slats, these long ones, and this one at the back. And then Control J, and let's just call that slats. Now, when it comes to texturing, you think this would be a problem, but it's not. So if you tab into it, I think, oh, I want a different texture on the slats to I want on the screws. That's fine. If you hover over the slat and press L, it only selects the link geometry. And then if you only want that, see, just press L and it links all of them. And let's just try, if you select, go into select whilst in edit mode, select link, all by trait, select similar face angles. Yes, that works. If you select similar face angles, you can select all of those at once. So when it comes to, oh, well, it'd be better if we were in face mode. So select similar, no, select, no, with this one selected, L, select similar, area, no, poop, L, select similar, do you know what, we'll deal with that later. We'll just deal with it later. For now, we have a Dalek. Let's be happy about that. So well done for getting this far. It's not been easy. The slats are actually one of the most irritatingly complicated parts of the whole thing. I apologise if I've gone too quickly. If you need anything explained or gone over again, please give me a comment, send me a message. I'll go over whatever you need me to go over. So the last thing that we're going to do today is this little, I suppose it's like a little connector box thing at the front of the shoulder bands and the back of the shoulder bands. I imagine it's there to screw the bands onto the shoulder so they're not just floating in midair. Now, we don't really have the dimensions of them, so we've got how wide it needs to be, but we're going to have to eyeball a lot of it. Same with these little screws. So I'm going to use our screw master and just assume that everything's the same size as the screws on the slats. So I'll show you how we do that. It should be nice and quick. But again, we're just going to eyeball this really. So let's select everything by pressing A and hide. And I don't know why I did that. Oh, also Shift S to make sure cursor is back to world origin. And let's just unhide the shoulder bands and go into front view. Now, what we want to do is add a mesh cube, and we know it needs to be 32 wide. So let's just type in 32, and then we're going to do a lot of positioning by eye. So go into 3 for side view and grab Y and just move this little guy out. Now, I reckon front to back, it probably needs to be about, I'm going to say 5 mil, maybe even 3 mil, like the slats. And just like the slats, what we're going to do is position him kind of inset into the band. So grab Y, just push him back until he's roughly inside. And then we are going to rotate. So R, and then just rotate until it's roughly half in. And let's just see from the front. That's a bit too far. Grab Y and just bring him out just a little bit, like that. Yeah, that should be fine. And then if we go back into local, I want to scale him up on the Z axis, so he's covering the whole band. So S for scale, Z, and just drag him up. So it's obviously a bit too big. G, Z, and move him down to about there. That should be fine. And then let's Control A to apply the scale. Now we need another version of that at the top. So Shift D to duplicate. Go to 3 for side view. Grab Z, and you'll see it sort of goes up in the direction we need. Bit too far back. Grab Z. Again, we can just do this by eye. Needs to be a little bit taller, so scale Z, drag him up. Grab Z, then grab Y. And then actually tap Y again and that'll constrain it to the world coordinates again, and just drag him forward. Lovely, and then Control A, apply the scale, and then we need one on the back as well. So if we Shift D, change our pivot point to 3D cursor, R180, so he's not in the right place, but he's kind of where he needs to be. Change our pivot point back to bounding box. That's not actually the one we needed, so it's just X that. It's this one that we needed. So Shift D, then R180. Oop, no, R after you select 3D cursor, R180, and then drag him out by double tapping Y. And GYY. So we obviously need to change the rotation. So change our pivot point back to bounding box center, rotate. Again, this doesn't have to be hugely accurate, just do it by eye. GYY. That'll do. And then what we can actually do, tab into edit mode, double tap A to deselect, 3 for face mode, or use this up here. Grab this top face, grab Z, let's just drag him up. There we are. What I really should have done is bevel it. I'll bevel it now. So all these ones here, let's just do exactly what we did. So in edge mode, A, select everything, Control B, and just put a tiny little bevel on. Let's do 0.25. This one, tab in, double tap A, and then tap A to select everything. Control B, 0.25, and we're still using 3 segments. And then this last one over here. Tab in, double tap A to select everything, Control B, 0.25, there. And now let's just grab our screw master again, which is right in the center. GY, and it's because we're set to local, so set that back to global for now. GY, drag him out. Great. And we want, according to the plans anyway, the thing at the top needs to be in the center, the one here needs to be slightly raised up. So again, we can just kind of do this by eye. So 1 for front view, drag him to roughly where we think he needs to be, GZ, probably about here. 3 for side view, GY, bring him back so he's slightly inside the little box. R to rotate, and just rotate him into position. That's good. And then Shift D. Oh, in fact, let's change it to local. Shift D, and then grab Z. Oh, my rotation's all screwed up. Okay, well, we'll have fun. So GY in this situation. Hopefully yours will be a little bit easier than mine. GY. Again, there are more technical ways of doing this, but this way is fine. Nobody will really see these details because most of them will be covered up by the slats. And then to see where the back one goes, let's just have a look at the reference here at the back. So it's right at the center of the one at the back. So let's grab this fella here, Shift D, go back to global, go pivot point 3D cursor, 7 for top view, R180. So he's too far in. So grab Y. Let's change our pivot point back to bounding box. rotate. And let's just make it a bit higher up. So G and what we say was Y. Yeah. Yeah. So rotate him a little bit better. G, Y, Y. And move him up to roughly the center. G, Y, Y. You can just eyeball this, honestly. Lovely. And then for the screws around the bands, really easy way of doing it. We're going to position it like we did the hemispheres. So let's just, it's easier if we just add a new UV sphere. So Shift A, Mesh, UV sphere, and let's put the radius as 2.5. Let's just scroll in. Yep, lovely. Right click, shade smooth. Press 3 to go into side view. Let's go into wireframe and tab into edit mode. Double tap A, deselect, grab these verts here, X to delete them, and then let's grab this bottom row here. E to extrude, Z, and let's go -1. Lovely. So our origin is still here, but we've got this extra row of verts here. Now, go back into solid mode. For our shoulder bands, let's just click those, object, origin to 3D cursor. So now the origin of this fella here and the origin of the shoulders is in the same, which is very important for what we're about to do next. So what I want to do is put these screws onto very specific parts. And the easiest way of doing it is by highlighting the shoulder bands, Shift D, duplicate it, right click to confirm, hide the original shoulder bands, and let's just call it shoulder bands cut. And let's get rid of all the geometry we don't need. So 1 to go into front face, tab into edit mode, go into X-ray mode, and let's just delete this entire half here. And then let's delete, oh, what are you doing there? Oh, that's part of the box. And then let's delete all these top ones. And then let's go into face select. Let's just see where we need them to be. So they're slightly, okay. Let's add a loop cut. Roughly slightly less than halfway up. Let's have a look. Yeah. Oh, no, actually way more than halfway up. So we want it to kind of be in line with this one here. And then let's start deleting faces. So again, let's not worry too much about accuracy. So what we're going to do is just select the faces that we want to have these screws on. So we can eyeball it. So 3 for face select. And let's just see. So we need one roughly here. I'm just shift selecting. Let's do this one actually. And then on the side, we want one kind of here, and one here. Let's do one here. And at the back, what have we got? So let's do one here and one here. So with these ones selected, just press Control I, and it selects the opposite of the ones we've just done. X, delete faces. Lovely. And then tab out of that. Let's grab this little UV sphere. Let's call this band screws. Let's, with that selected, shift select our shoulder bands cut, Control and P, set parent to object, and then let's go with the shoulder bands cut selected, go into the object data properties, instancing, and select faces, just like we did with the hemispheres. So now each one of these little UV spheres is connected to this face. Great. And then select shoulder bands cut, Control A, make instances real. Then we can delete our shoulder bands cut. we can delete this sphere at the center. So now we've just got the ones around the edge. Alt-H to unhide everything. And you can see they're all positioned right on that shoulder band. So let's just take each one of these, shift click, oops, shift click, stop it, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, not you, shift click, control J, so now they're all one object. They're called band screws. Great. Control A, apply all transforms, go into modifiers, add modifier, generate mirror, so now they're on the other side as well. Apply that. Let's select this cube. Oh, we can't see the other one, let's just hide this. So let's select this cube, this cube, this cube, and also let's select the screws on them as well. And that one, and control J. So now they're all one object as well, so let's call that shoulder slat shoulder band connections. Let's press Alt H, unhide everything, Control S to save, and I think that's us done. That has been a long tutorial for something that actually not really many details. Now let's just double check one last thing. Let's make sure all our faces are on the right way. So let's click on this drop down here, face orientation. Perfect, everything is exactly the right way around. The last thing I want to do, which I should have done ages ago, let's just select our skirt, and I, no, what am I doing? Select our skirt, press the / key to isolate it. Is that / or is it backslash? I think it's backslash actually. It's whatever the one with the question mark above it is. And what we want to do, tab into edit mode, let's select these top edges here. And then we're just going to scale them in. So E to extrude, S for scale, Shift Z, so it doesn't scroll up or down, scale up or down, and let's just drag it in. There we go. Tab out of edit mode, press the / key again, and I think we are done. Excellent. That is looking very, very good. That's looking like a Dalek. Last thing, let's select the shoulder section, tab into edit mode with this top edge selected, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab out, A to select everything, object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor, Shift S, cursor to world origin, A to select everything again, Shift S, selection to cursor. And now that brings everything back down to ground level. So when we do the next section in the next tutorial, we can just start from 0 again. Let's turn off face orientation, and there we go. Whey! Well done you. Thanks for checking this one out. Again, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your enemies. Thank you very much.